Did you know that there used to be a Pirates of the Caribbean attraction that Disney would probably rather have you forget about?
In fact, they tore down the building that we're talking about just so you would never talk about it again. Before this area became a walkway for the entrance to and from Toy Story Land, it was a whole entire building that housed numerous attractions, but one so infamous Disney wants you to forget about. What am I talking about? The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow.
Dead men tell no tales.
To get the full scope and the full picture of why this attraction was such a dud, we have to go back even further to what was in this building, this soundstage, years ago when back then MGM Studios was a thing.
In May 1st, 1989, in an effort to compete with the coming Universal Studios park, Disney decided to open its third gate, Disney's MGM Studios. When the park first opened, it only had two operating attractions, one being the Great Movie Ride, and two, the main star of the show, the Studio Backlot Tour. And this is where our story truly starts, because the Studio Backlot Tour at the time was separated into two segments, one being a walking segment that provided guests with an immersive behind-the-scenes look into the filmmaking process. And Soundstage 4, which would later house The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow, was originally part of this walking segment of the Studio Backlot Tour. This walking segment of the tour had key features including a special effects water tank where guests observed demonstrations showcasing how water-based special effects were created for films. They even had volunteers participating in reenacting nautical battle scenes, illustrating the complexities of shooting such sequences. A prop warehouse where visitors would walk through aisles filled with props from various Disney productions, offering insights into set design and the extensive inventory required for movie production. And soundstage viewing, where the tour included views into active sound stages, allowing guests to witness real-time production activities and understand the intricacies of set construction and filming. In 1991, due to the park's growing popularity, much of the walking portion of the Backlot Tour was restructured in a separate attraction called the Backstage Pass. This aimed to manage guest flow more effectively and enhance the visitor experience. The Backstage Pass attraction continued to offer guests an in-depth look into the behind-the-scenes aspects of movie production. In 1996, the entrance to the Backlot Tour was moved to replace the Backstage Pass entrance at the end of Mickey Avenue. This relocation included the construction of a new entrance ramp to the water effects tank, a prop warehouse building for additional queue space, and a new loading area for the trams. By 2001, the Backstage Pass attraction was closed, and the area underwent further transformations to accommodate new attractions and experiences for guests. By the Backstage Pass attraction closing, this officially meant that Soundstage 4 was empty and needed a new attraction. And this is the time period that my history is a little fuzzy. From what I can gather, from 2001 to 2005, this soundstage was mainly used to promote the upcoming movies that Disney had released, as a kind of temporary exhibit and promotional showcase for any of Disney's upcoming films. Through all the research, I've only been able to really find one movie in particular that was showcased here. The movie I found was the Making of the Haunted Mansion movie. We're obviously not talking about the one that just came out, but that infamous one with Eddie Murphy that, well, fans were never really pleased with. Once guests entered the building, they encountered a photo gallery with various pictures from the Haunted Mansion. Once guests entered the attraction, they were presented a 15-minute featurette with clips from the movie. After the presentation, guests were able to explore the interior of the building to see the sets and props used in the movie itself. However, photography was not allowed inside the building's special exhibit, which means obviously it was extremely hard to find any kind of video or photos of what this attraction was. After the Making of the Haunted Mansion movie officially closed, probably because of the lack of success with it, they had to move on to something else. Journey into Narnia, creating The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Operating starting December 9th, 2005, guests were led into an antechamber with a wardrobe prop entrance. The audience was then led through wardrobe doors into a large room adorned with flocked pine trees, a lamppost, a large tree illuminated with fiber optics, and a large 150-inch projection television screen. The screen displayed a greatly abridged version of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the 2005 feature film that inspired this walkthrough attraction. attraction. At a key point in the story, a white witch appeared on a terrace above the crowd and read a few lines from the film. Then the film would continue on screen, followed by a short preview of the Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, the second feature film, which was later to be released in 2008. After standing and watching for 15 minutes, the audience was then exited through a hallway that had several costumes that were from the film. None of this material was exclusive to the show. It could all be found on the DVD version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe film, or you could also watch the online previews of Prince Caspian and would be the same. This attraction mainly served the same purpose that the attractions before it. After the backstage pass closed, it was really just Disney's way to promote, again, an upcoming film. This attraction actually lasted until January 1st of 2008. The next attraction that took its place was not far off from its predecessor. This attraction, Journey into Narnia Prince Caspian, was another walkthrough style attraction that basically did the same job as the last attraction in its place. The only difference being it was promoting the second movie in the series. While in line, the queue displayed Narnia-related trivia questions on screens. Guests then entered the pre-show area where they viewed behind-the-scenes footage featuring the film's director, Andrew Adamson. Passing through a rockwork archway, guests then entered Aslan's stone table chamber, the underground vault of stone carvings where Aslan sacrificed himself in the first movie. There, guests saw a short edited clip from the movie. Multiple screens, dimensional sound, and in-theater effects enhanced the scene of Peter and Edmund's temptation to use the power of the White Witch against King Miraz to win back Caspian's place on the throne. Finally, the walkthrough concluded with a look at the concept art and storyboards from the film's production, as well as some of the actual props and costumes used by the cast and crew. Now, again, it really was doing the same job that the last attraction did. It was a walkthrough attraction, it showed you some behind-the-scenes clips of the movie, and it promoted the movie itself. Do we see a pattern here? After running its course for a couple of years, Journey into Narnia Prince Caspian closed on September 10th, 2011. And of course, the next attraction that followed is the main event. The whole reason we're here, the worst pirates attraction that was ever made, The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow. Opening its doors on December 6, 2012, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow was a walkthrough attraction announced as a first-of-its-kind sensory experience. This Pirates of the Caribbean experience allowed guests to enter the world of the popular film franchise. Located in, of course, Soundstage 4, it was between the then entrance to Toy Story Midway Mania and the Walt Disney Presents exhibit. The show began in a pre-show area in which a talking skull, a nod to the original Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, introduces the show and questions the integrity of those waiting to go inside and join Captain Jack Sparrow's crew. For the main show, guests entered a large room which was decorated with various props along the sides and featured a large-scale model of the Black Pearl, which serves as a portion of the show's projection screen. Using Disney's high-resolution projection mapping system, the now floating skull invites the pirate pledge, usually a small child, holding the iron key to insert it into the treasure chest. The child really just holds it up and the show begins. From here, the audience journeys through each of the films in a show that involves physical and lighting effects in addition to the projections. From a skeleton army to Davy Jones to the Kraken and more, the lifelike projections also appear to literally fly off the screen along the back of the wall to over the Black Pearl and other objects inside the room. Eventually, Captain Jack Sparrow himself appears aboard the ship, and after defeating Davy Jones' ship, the Flying Dutchman leads guests through the Pirate's Oath in a way that only Jack Sparrow can. At the time when the attraction was announced, Jason Sorrell, who was part of Disney Imagineering at the time, said that The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow is an immersive theatrical experience in which our guests will actually get to follow in the footsteps of Captain Jack himself to see if they have what it takes to be pirates and be members of his crew. They're guided through his adventure by this embodied talking skull and puts them through their paces and allows them to face all the trials of a pirate's life.
It really sounded like this attraction had the potential for greatness. But why did it fail so exponentially? And why did it lead to the building being demolished to give us the entrance to Toy Story Land?
The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow was a bold attempt by Disney to leverage the enormous popularity of the Pirates of the Caribbean film franchise into a park attraction. However, despite the initial excitement, it quickly fizzled out with guests. Let's take a look at what people had to say about this attraction, because it's pretty bad. Eric says, "Don't go on this. Do not ride this. It is not worth the wait." Okay, now that I've gotten that out of the way, we were looking for something to do to kill the time before Fantasmic, but didn't have enough time to ride a big ride. So what then? Let's try this cool looking Pirates thing. Mistake number 1, getting in line. It's super long and moves slower than you'd think. It took 45 minutes to get in, and about 40 minutes of that was standing in the same spot. My back was hurting and I was tired. Needless to say, I was not comfortable. Mistake number 2, we didn't read the reviews. You all warned us, but we didn't check the reviews until 30 minutes into it. At that time, we were committed. We were joking that this would be as bad as Poseidon's Fury, from Islands of Adventure, but we were wrong. It's worse. The only cool thing about it is that the imagery for Captain Jack Sparrow actually looked real. So the actual experience is a series of images on different surfaces to portray skeletons and ships, and you're in a battle or something like that. It'd be cool for kids who love pirates, I guess. But if I were a kid, I'd be annoyed. Just avoid it. Well, that was pretty harsh. But let's see what Brian has to say. I gave it 2 stars only because it still looks new, but it's a pretty lame attraction that looks like a Disney engineer found an unused broom closet he decided to fit a themed attraction in. These reviews. There are bad angles, lame dialogue, and the plot of it's lamer than most, and that's saying a lot. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. I wish I could say that the reviews got better, but if you look on Yelp or any other review platform, you'll just see that it's just a bunch of 2 stars and 1 stars. And I think the 2 stars are just basically out of pity because it was supposed to be a brand new attraction and people were just not into it at all. But what happened? Why was this attraction such a dud? Well, there's several key failings that we can point out. 1, the flawed concept. The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow was a walkthrough interactive show, which meant it lacked the dynamic movement and thrill that guests often expect from a theme park attraction. Unlike the actual Pirates of the Caribbean ride, which is of course rich in narrative and had that sense of adventure, this attraction was a passive experience. A bunch of guests were expected to stand in a room and watch scenes play out around them, and really scenes that lacked any cohesive storyline. The level of engagement was minimal, leading to a feeling that the experience was more like a prolonged advertisement for the film than a fully realized attraction. Again, do we see a parallel? Number 2, the limited capacity and long wait times. We've already read about that. The show could only accommodate a limited number of guests per session, resulting in really long wait times for what was ultimately a short and somewhat underwhelming experience. The high demand for anything Pirates of the Caribbean related at the time led to inflated expectations, which the attraction was just simply not able to meet. As a result, many guests left feeling disappointed after waiting for what they felt was really an unworthy payoff. Number 3, a lack of replay value. Of course, a critical element to any successful theme park attraction is the ability to draw guests back in for repeat experiences, even after they know what's going to happen. The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow failed miserably in this regard. The show was nearly identical every time, with little to no variation between performances. Once a guest really had seen it, there was no incentive to return. The lack of replay value quickly eroded the attraction's popularity, as guests would opt for other experiences in the park that offered more excitement and variety. And think about that. The whole point that you would want to see a show over and over again is the fact that it's different every single time. Think about the horror makeup show over at Universal Studios. The reason that you would want to keep going back to that is the show, yes, while the format of the show largely remains the same, you get different hosts every single time depending on when you're seeing the show, and there's different guest interaction, slightly different jokes. The whole interaction between the team members and the guests is different every single time. And if you don't have that replay value, especially in a walkthrough attraction or show, people are just not going to want to do it. Number 4, underwhelming technology. Despite what we talked about featuring some modern technology, such as, the projection mapping and the special effects, which Disney was just at the time like getting a hold of and really mastering, the Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow was not a technological marvel. The effects, of course, were impressive, but they weren't groundbreaking, and many guests felt like the attraction was more style than the actual substance. There was no meat on the bones. The lack of animatronics, which of course are a hallmark of Disney attractions, was also a sore point. The central figure of Captain Jack Sparrow was mainly a projection, which left the experience ultimately feeling hollow and less immersive. Number 5, the general lack of enthusiasm. Ultimately, The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow failed because it didn't capture the imagination of the audience. Again, unlike the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, which still has timeless appeal, and I think will for a very long time, this walkthrough attraction, on the other hand, felt like an afterthought, a rushed attempt to cash in on a popular franchise. Does this sound like I'm repeating myself? But they just didn't have the time to develop an attraction that had the necessary depth and creativity. The lukewarm reception from both critics and guests alike led to dwindling attendance, and Disney made the decision to close the attraction less than 2 years after its debut.
The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow closed on November 6th of 2014 after its very short run. The closure was a bigger part of Disney's shift around not so much behind the scenes with behind the scenes shows and attractions, but they wanted you to live inside of the movies. This shift was really brought about by competition. Universal in 2009 came out with the first Wizarding World of Harry Potter. The success of that led Disney to see that that type of land, not the behind the scenes of previous Universal Studios, the land that immerses guests in the movies that they know and love, was really what fans were looking for at the time. This led them to close these attractions that weren't even working in the first place, and ultimately demolish the building that housed The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow to make room for Toy Story Land behind me. Whether we liked it or not, this was Disney's shift away from the behind-the-scenes attractions of the early 80s and 90s and early 2000s. It was Disney starting to shift to the world of IP-themed lands. This was the first one that we really saw in Hollywood studios, but it would soon not be the last. In May 31st of 2019, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland opened up to guests. But shortly thereafter, in August of 2019, here at Hollywood Studios, we got our version of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. But the point being that it all started with Wizarding World, and that shift from behind the scenes of Hollywood to now you're living the movies that started in Hollywood. Part of me wonders what would have happened if Universal had never built the Wizarding World. A lot of things in the theme parks, both at Universal and Disney, would be completely different. Would The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow still be here? There's a lot of pondering questions in there, but I want you to write down in the comments if you ever got to experience The Legend of Captain Jack Sparrow or the walkthrough attractions that were there before it, like Narnia. That way we know that you watched to the end of this video and you are the true fans. Till next time, I've been Cal, and you've been watching The Adventure Gateway.